Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1994 and 1995 Bowman's Best Football. This card set came about as kind of a long process that Topps had been going through. In 1989, they had wanted to make a higher-end card set, and they created a set called Bowman, which was trying to ride the fascination that the card industry had at the time with old cards. And Bowman is basically kind of the grandfather of Topps. So they were using that name to bring back the nostalgia. And they figured that that would be pretty much enough to make a higher end card set. Unfortunately for them, Upper Deck had a similar idea, and they had a better idea. And so Bowman never got off the ground because Topps was just making Topps cards and they put a Bowman name on it. That's basically it. In fact, Bowman cards early on were a lot cheaper than just in terms of the design, they were a lot cheaper than the actual Topps cards, which means that they were never able to do any shred of what Topps hoped that they would do. Topps never gave up on it, but it was always just kind of sitting there as kind of a quirky cousin to Topps. It wouldn't be until 1991, when Topps released Stadium Club, that they could actually enter into the premium card market. And Stadium Club did a pretty good job. But really it was 1992 when Bowman was able to kind of exercise the curse that it had and start to become a premium card and really surpass Stadium Club, which was good. But Topps really always wanted for Bowman the name of Bowman to really stand as a very high-end and elite idea of cards. And while Bowman was working on that, 1992 was the year when Topps kicked off, or it kind of foreshadowed the upcoming ultra premium brand era. And ultra premium brands, which hit in 1993, would completely reshape the landscape. And it would make sure that Bowman stayed basically right in the premium brand range, which was good, but it still didn't quite have the cachet that it could potentially have. And with these premium brands, there were a number of brands that, SP, Select, Flair, these card brands they were really good. They were really exciting and they were reinventing the industry, but no card was able to match what Topps released in 1993 with Finest, where they went in a whole new direction and really opened up some territory that was going to be really fascinating to explore, because they made a technically complex card in Finest. They'd foreshadowed it in 92, but in 1993 in baseball, they launched these cards in packs, and the whole industry it really knocked us all on our butts. And it was great, except the fact that Finest was a flashy card. There was so much potential these cards had, but it wasn't quite realized. So Topps decided to keep the momentum going and ride on this wave by, in 1994, launching an upgrade on even Finest, which they decided to take that Bowman name, which was supposed to be the more elite. Well, they decided to make an elite version of Finest using Bowman, using the name Bowman's Best. And in baseball, they launched it right out of the gate. In football, they would wait a little bit. Now, they did release it in 1994, just not in packs. And so, in much the same way as Flair in 1994 was launched as an insert for Ultra, so too were the football Bowman's Best cards inserts in Stadium Club packs. That's where you found these cards. And because they were inserts in packs, it was not a big set. It was only 45 cards. Only it's difficult to really appreciate that because of the card numbering, which I'll get to. The main thing about these cards is that these cards are everything that the Finest cards had the potential to be. The Finest cards use an iridescent quality that has a jewel-like quality. It really does have a gem essence to it, which is really neat. But when you have a flashy card, you're not able to really appreciate it. Here, they sat down and they really appreciated it. The cards themselves, they have three main areas up on the top, and then they have a banner down at the bottom. They have dark charcoal on the outside. They have a zigzag of a really thin red line, and then they have a zigzag of silver, and then they have dark charcoal behind the player. All of this is done in a stone design, and using the stone, they're able to use all the little pit marks, etc., to create a fascinating texture around this card. And so as the light hits it, it has just this truly gem-like quality to it that really captured everything that the finest cards could be. In fact, the 1992 finest cards, the test set they'd done, had actually captured this. They didn't bother to really take advantage of it in the main sets. So here with the Bowman's Best, they did. They stepped back and they just made these gorgeous jewel-like cards. Now the card back, these are inserts, so they could get away with having basically nothing on the card back. Really, other than the picture, it's the card number that is the big accent. But that number is actually significant. There are 17 veteran cards. There are also 17 rookie cards. And the rookie cards, they basically replaced all the charcoal with blue, which makes these cards stand out beautifully. They really are strong. They're very dynamic. They're gorgeous cards. But the card numbers are the same. Interestingly, they're cards 1 through 17. Veteran, 1 through 17, rookie. So there are 34 cards, but they're all numbered 1 through 17. And this makes it a little bit tricky because, I mean, obviously when you have the cards, you can tell. One has kind of a black-like design, the other has blue. But how do you deal with that in checklists? So the way that we do it is we have an R or a V. R for rookie, V for veteran. And that distinguishes between them. But it makes it even more confusing because, like I said, it's 45 cards. However, card number 18 is a combination card. Cards 18 through 28. And so numerically, it's a 28 card set. In reality, it's a 45 card set. So 18 through 28 are 11 cards where they have a veteran and they have a rookie on each card, split right down the middle. Really cool cards. So there are a lot of veterans and a lot of rookies that aren't featured in these combination cards. But that's the way that they built the set. And these cards, they are finest, so there is the potential. At this point, the finest cards had a tendency to they didn't age well. Unfortunately, these cards kind of have that tendency. So that's not really, that's a disappointment because these cards do look great. Also, their finest, which would beg the question, did they ever do the protectors on them? And the answer is no. They never put protectors on these Bowman Best cards. 94 football, they didn't bother with that. So these cards all came out of the pack in the way that Topps really had it intended for all of these cards to come out. But I guess that it was a higher end card, the idea, so they figured there wouldn't be much roughhousing. I don't know why, but they always came out without a protector. So that's something distinctive about Bowman's Best. But also their finest, so it begs the question, did they do a refractor parallel? And the answer is yes, they most definitely did. So all 45 cards can be found in the regular version. They also all come with the refractor parallel as well. Now, there is another component to this, which is the fact that these were in Stadium Club packs. So begs the question, did they do a members only parallel? Yes, they did. For those of you who don't know what members only is, Stadium Club in 1990, when Stadium Club was founded, it was founded with a whole club, which was a members only club. And there were a couple of clubs that were going on at this point. But the idea of Stadium Club's members only club was you could buy special stuff that other people couldn't buy. And one of those was, starting in 1993, you could buy a complete set of the whole Stadium Club release, which is the main cards in the set and the inserts. Now, this wasn't that big of a deal in 1993 because they didn't have that many inserts. But in 1994, they did. And they all came in the members only set. So that means that every single one of these 45 cards can be found with a members only parallel as well. So the way that you tell it is when you have it so the stripes are up and down, somewhere in the silver is two little lines and then the letters members only, and they're stacked. So instead of the letters all lining up, they're stacked from top to bottom and they say members only. Now it's different on different cards, so it repositions, but it's always in that strip, in that silver strip where you're going to find it. But then it also begs the question, well, what about the refractor cards? They did not do members only refractors. So there are 3 versions of every card. There is the main release, there is the refractor parallel, and there's the members only parallel. So that's the way that it comes. And it was a really good model for them to go with. Cards look gorgeous. I mean, it really did. This was pretty much the height of what they were able to do with this technology. They captured it beautifully. The set was the right size. It was a fun thing to get in inserts. Great lead into 1995. And in 1995, they did basically the same thing. They really didn't change very much to it. Now, the cards themselves are done now as a very professional card. Actually, the design is fairly similar to the actual Bowman release in 1995. But this is a case where they have the actual background behind the player, which with these finest, the treatment of the finest card is gorgeous, really great. And along with the stone, I mean, the whole design of this card is fantastic, but it needed to be. These were expensive cards. These came $4 to $5 a pack. And that may not seem like much now, but at that time it was shockingly expensive. Now, every year there was kind of a new step that would happen in the world of cards. There'd be another card set that would come out that would wow everybody and be super expensive. They tended to be really flashy. So you had a set like SP, which obviously had the etched foil. You had Finest, which had this technology. You had Crown Royale, which was die cut. You had SPX, which had holograms in it. There are these benchmark sets that really stand out in our memory because of how distinctive they were. This was a benchmark set that everybody forgets about. It's kind of like Topps Gold Label from just 3 years prior, but at least with Gold Label, they had something special about it that remained in people's minds. But this was the same thing as Gold Label, done in a different way, but since it didn't have anything flashy, it's something that's easy to forget. So this was about as high-end as cards got, I mean, truly. And the cards were pretty shockingly expensive. Their whole intent was these were the cards to get of your player. And on top of that, the way they designed the card set was it was 90 cards. Well, but like the previous year, it's also 90 cards. So there are 90 veteran cards, but there were 90 rookies. And this was almost unheard of at this time. 90 rookies is a lot of rookies. But you could maybe get like a score set from 90 or 91. That might have 90 rookies. But in this case, there were as many rookies as veterans. Half of the cards in this set were rookies. That was really big. That was a big deal. So this whole card set was supposed to be for you to get, say, Michael Westbrook or Kerry Collins, Cordell Stewart, Steve McNair, to get the high-end rookies of these players. That was what it was. And this, we'd see a little bit more of this later on, but this card set was kind of ahead of its time by reaching like that. And so the reason that these cards look so good is because they were expecting a lot of consumers and they had to earn it, and they did a really good job. So the card design here, it has the jewel-like quality, but it has a really nice, well-refined design. And on the card back, it does everything that you want for the card back to do. It has some information. You're not going to read it. With the high-end cards, let's face it, you already know just about everything about these players. That's not why you get the card. You get the card because it's going to look good. And on the card back, it looks good. Can you read it? Not really, but that's not, you might not even ever read the backs of these cards. That's not the point of them. So the cards were just magnificently designed. And the rookies, they basically came out the same way, except just like the previous year, all that charcoal is replaced with blue. And here, that jewel-like blue is impressive. It really is rich. Magnificent card designs. I love the way these come out. And so for the cards for these sets, and this was quite a rookie year. It's kind of weird to say it now, but Kerry Collins, Tyrone Wheatley, Westbrook, I mean, Galloway, these guys were big deals. And at the end of the day, it was players like Terrell Davis, Curtis Martin, Steve McNair. Look, Warren Sapp, these guys were big players regardless. This rookie year was a phenomenal rookie year, both the guys that we intended and the guys that we ended up rooting for. So it was a great year to have really great rookie cards. And obviously these all come with refractors, but a note about the refractors, unlike in 1994 where they did no differentiation with there was no text saying refractor, in 1995 they do technically have it. It's just almost impossible to read right under the number on the card backs. And I think that the numbers on the card backs do read really well, but some of the numbers can be difficult to read. But for the most part, they read well. It's just that you can't read the refractor. So, for what it's worth. But This was just like the 1994 set in terms of how they laid it out. You have the same number of veterans as rookies, and you have the combination cards. But in this case, they did the combinations cards in two different ways. One, they did it as an insert set. Two, they did it as the first 15 draft picks of the 95 and the 94 draft. So that means that you're not getting Jerry Rice and Joe Montana and Dan Marino on these cards. Instead, you're getting the 1994 draft picks. And because it's specified by draft pick, that creates an interesting dilemma, because the problem you run into with the high-end draft picks at this time, especially 1994, you get a lot of offensive linemen and a lot of defensive players. The main veterans in the set, there are only 90 of them. And that means there are basically 3 per team. And when you have 3 players per team, you're not getting any offensive linemen unless their name happens to be Anthony Munoz, who'd already retired. And defensive players, very rare. They just had almost no offensive players in 1994's draft, or early in the draft. So that means that you really only get the chance of players like Marshall Faulk and Trent Dilfer. And I would love to have used the Marshall Faulk cards here, but you'll notice that I was using Antonio Langham and Kyle Brady. The reason? I didn't want to use Trent Dilfer, and Marshall Faulk is actually not in the main set. The only Marshall Faulk card here in this Bowman's Best set is in the insert. That's the only place where you find his card. But that's what's really interesting about this, is the fact that they're, other than Dilfer and Langham, all of the cards in this insert set, at least for the 94 draft picks, it's the only card that they got in the set. As far as the rookies, they all have 2 cards. But for the veterans, almost none of the players in the insert set have cards in the main set, for what it's worth. And these insert cards are interestingly designed because they were done later on in 1998. Finest would do the same thing as what they're doing here. And so the rules still apply, but they wanted to do a 2 front cards. So instead of a front with just a regular card back, which is typical for Finest, they needed a card front and they needed a card front, but the card fronts, the filler doesn't apply. So they have a really thin card that's really well stamped. And so it has almost a cracker-like feel, a very, very tinny-like feel to it that's very different than the cards in the set. They are thinner. So they're very unusual cards, but you get the front of the card on both sides. And with the refractor is also on both sides. So they didn't play any tricks with it. It's either a regular card or both sides are refractor. But that was what they did in the first 2 years of Bowman's Best. I definitely went very, very deep into it, but to me, I felt that it was really important because these 2 sets are very distinctive, very unique, and there's a lot of complexity to it. While this is a lot more history than you may necessarily care about, it is good to really be able to understand just how special these cards are, why these cards are special, and to get an appreciation for what was going on at this time, because this really was a fascinating card set and a fascinating time of the evolution of cards. And some of the conceptualization of all of this was a lot of fun. So I hope obviously any of you who are still with me, I haven't bored you too much. I'm sorry to anybody who fell off, but like it matters at this point. But I am definitely going to be doing 96 and 97 and going on with the ones later on. So look out for those if you're watching this before I've done them. Otherwise, check them out. Definitely check out my other videos if you haven't had a chance. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And thank you very much for watching.